I am IlluminAnnie, and I am a new DM. And I decided that it might be kind of fun to make a series of videos talking about my process and how I prepare for things and the story I'm making and what went wrong and what went right, and sort of, a journal of sorts, a vlog. So this is that vlog. I'm doing this in the early morning because it is the best time for me to film, and I have to do it on the porch because it's early morning and everyone in the house is asleep. But I like early morning times. Anyway, the story so far, where we last left our heroes, was nowhere. We never left them because we never picked them up. So let's go ahead and do that.
First, we have Smiles Brightmeadow, a tabaxi bard. This lovely little cat comes from a very large family, but he feels like he needs to make a name for himself, so he's amped up on his stories and songs. That's right, he's a lore bard, and now he's off on his first adventure to prove himself, to find an epic. Then we have Kava, a green dragonborn monk. This city girl is unsure of nature, having lived all of her life secluded in a monastery. There she learned all of her monkly ways. But she excelled in the healing arts, which is why she has chosen the path of the selfless soul. However, she is now too old to be in the monastery and they kicked her out, so she has gone to seek her fortune and find her path. Ishiar, Druid Aarakocra, comes next. This albino bird was sick and disgusted by the racist inherent in his bird society, so he left and went on a journey of discovery. There he found a huge love for animals and became a Circle of the Moon, so he can be whatever animal he wants. He has made his way to harbor to just find somewhere new. Last up is Philbus Mucksucker, a Kuatoa warlock. Kuatoa once had a beautiful island paradise, but it was taken over and destroyed by the shark-like Sahuagin. Now they roam the ocean as refugees, and also make their home inland, like this fabulous fish. Like most Kuatoa, he has a special relationship with their patron, the greatest fish. And be careful, folks, this one's a spell slinger. That's right, he's the Pact of the Tome, and he's also a criminal. 2 for 1!
I was a little nervous and worried about bringing them all together. I wanted them to all get along. So what I did for the session zeros is I called them in out onto this very porch, actually, and I asked them for their numbers. I wanted their AC, their passive perception, and their passive wisdom, just because I thought it was good to have that written down. I really didn't care about their health. They don't know my monster's health, so I don't really care about their health. Anyway, and then I started asking them questions about their characters. I asked about their family, I asked about their history, their backstory. Since I'm starting them off at 3rd level, one of the other things that we did was talk about how they got their 3rd level boon, because at the 3rd level you can sort of define your character a little bit more. And so I just skip over those first 2 levels because, whatever, and begin with the 3rd level. And then I asked them how they got to their place. So that was good. And then we sort of worked that into their backstory, into their journey. I was worried that me, saying, give me this, give me that, what about this, would come off as arrogant, as bitchy, as a bad leader. But they all seem to really enjoy me giving them boundaries or asking them specific questions that they then had to fill. Because staring at a blank page and trying to come up with something off the cuff is really difficult. But when someone says, okay, here are the boundaries, now start, it's a little bit easier because you're not looking at infinity now. You have, okay, I need to come up with this specific thing, and you can focus a little bit better. So those session zeros went super, super well, and I'm very happy with that. I got enemies and friends, and they all, I got a ton of NPCs for free, basically, just by having a backstory. It was fabulous. I'm making my own world. I'm homebrewing my own world, but I'm doing a pre-written campaign, at least in the beginning of the adventure, just to kind of get my feet wet, get used to the idea, get used to running the campaign, and get everybody used to each other. There's a lot of balls that I'm juggling right now, and coming up with an adventure off the cuff is a little bit much for me, especially since I'm not used to adventuring. So, I am doing Dragon Heist, because I've always been fascinated with Waterdeep. I think it's one of the coolest cities I've ever heard of. I love the setting, I love the criminal factions, and I want to say I love the adventure, but I haven't actually read the adventure yet. So, I probably need to do that, since session 1 is coming up soon. I'll get to it, it'll be fine. Because I am homebrewing my own world, it has its own politics, it has its own setup in terms of, the elves and the dwarves and the halflings and the humans and the orcs and all the races that my players chose, because they didn't choose the regular ones. They're all sort of uniquely different. So, I am not using Waterdeep as a title, I'm using Harbor is my city. So I titled this the first leg of this adventure is called Welcome to Harbor. So, and Harbor, just so you guys know, is a dwarven-built city in the side of a cliff. It's kind of like the cliffs of Dover, where the land is just high above sea level on these base cliffs. So what the dwarves did is they dug an inland harbor, and then they bored holes and tunnels in the cliff to the sea to flood this little inland harbor that they made. And they made a harbor. So the first issue that I had to tackle was how to get all of these characters, who are all incredibly different and don't relate to each other at all, how do I get them to Harbor? Thankfully, they all knew they were going to Harbor when they made their backstories, so they're all eventually coming to Harbor. That's sort of in their backstories. So I just got them on a boat together. I slapped together an appropriate name and a fun crew, and I was like, alright, let's do this journey. I looked at the map of my world, and I thought about trade routes, and I was like, okay, here are where I made the port cities, here's how the trade route probably goes. Thankfully, one character was very close to the start of the trade route, so we started, and I didn't want any battle encounters, but I did want an encounter to fill out the world a little bit. I wanted an NPC encounter right off the bat that didn't include any of the player characters, to just sort of give them a touch of a big plot, because I have it in my head. And more on that later in the next video when I make the world video. In the video explaining the world, which I'll get to. I'll make at some point. So I had a Sahuagin encounter, because they're Kuatoa and Sahuagin, and they're fighting. And it's very important. They're not actively fighting. The Kuatoa have been vanquished effectively by the Sahuagin, and they are now refugees and wanderers of the sea. So when traveling from the first harbor to pick up the second player character, Smiles, the Tabaxi Bard, they had to cross Sahuagin territory. So I had a very formal meeting between them that was formulaic, I suppose, instead of formal. It was like, here I am, I'm the Sahuagin, and they go through this exchange
We are a ship and we are sailing free and clear. Suddenly, Sahuagin swarm. Be warned, traveler, you enter a realm blessed by Shakola. What mean ye? War? Nay, holy fish, I desire passage through this blessed way, and seek the blessing and permission of the ruler of the deep.
Have ye offerings for the maw of infinite teeth?
I give them 2 barrels of apples and a haunch of bacon.
Your gifts are worthy. You may pass unmolested.
Do. Wee.
Anyway, and so then they travel onward, and it was very important that they know that I wanted to introduce Midway Island, which is where this sort of meeting occurred very early on, because Midway Island is going to be incredibly important. It's the tip of the Bermuda Triangle, because of course there's a Bermuda Triangle in my game. Aliens are totally going to be a thing. Anyway, so we picked up Philbus. Philbus knows the captain, he knew the ships, and he immediately started to develop rapport with some of the NPCs, because this guy loves to improv, he loves to interact. So that's what we started to do. So, and thankfully, I had prepared just a list of names and a few attributes. I'd be like, okay, here's some people on the ship. I have a cook, I have a cabin boy, and I have like 2 to 3 just sailors that I can pop out. And so one of them was Old Claw, a half-elf with a claw for a hand who liked to gamble. And Philbus and he gambled. And I said that his claw was in the right hand, right? But I'm right-handed, so I kept taking the dice and rolling them with my right hand. And the players were like, how are you rolling it with your claw? What? It became this whole thing, especially since Old Claw lost like 10 gold or something. So then, after Philbus, we got to the next port city, and we picked up Ishi. And then we move along to harbor. So they were traveling along, and it's a foggy day, but then the fog rises, and they see these just cliffs, and it basically almost curves on the horizon. It's just this land mass that suddenly appears on the horizon and almost cuts it off. So it's just, bam, here's now land, as far as the eye can see. And then they come up, and they don't see ports, they don't see a harbor, they don't see docks. All they see is little black holes on these white cliff sides. And as they come through, and they see these tunnels, and they go through, and it's almost a little claustrophobic, because for weeks now, for months even, for Kava, months for those who first began this journey, it was these wide open vistas, and all of a sudden you get this huge ship squeezing through this hole that just fits it. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's, you see the sunshine, and you start to hear the noises when you pass the halfway point, and suddenly you come out, and it's just this you see this harbor, and then this city, and sort of like an amphitheater built up into the cliffside. And there you can see waterfalls coming down, wheels turning, water falling into the harbor, people shouting, people throwing things, and just an intense metropolis just bustles out before them, and suddenly they're there, and they're in the midst of civilization when before they had none. It's almost a culture shock. They're more smooth skins, I suppose I can call them. I like calling them smooth skins. That's taken from Fallout, but it's, the humans and the dwarves and they're all, they don't have fur, they don't have scales, they don't have feathers, they have smooth skin. That's what we have. So more smooth skins than they have basically ever seen. But thankfully, Harbor is very friendly to those not of smooth, to those of fur and feather and scale, because it is the main shipping town in this entire continent, basically. So it's used to these people. Philbus knew of a inn that was very friendly towards the fur and scaled and feathered creatures. So he leads them to this inn, and they go through the docking and the customs, and I had an inn prepared with halfling innkeeper because, you know, you want a jolly face when you first come in. Next session is going to begin with them sitting down and taking in their evening meal. It's going to begin in the evening, and I'm going to skip the first 2 levels of Dragon Heist and get right into the adventure on the 3rd level where the guy that gets murdered outside their place. So I have to flesh that out, but that's what I'm going to do next time, and I have to prep. I'm worried about battles. My math is not my strong point. Numbers flip and don't, like, numbers are not my friend. So, but numbers are basically everyone else's friends on the table, so if I don't know something, I can just be, what's this plus this? And I'll have 3 answers shot at me, and I believe one of them, or most of them, will probably be right. So that's gonna happen, and, that's really all I'm worried about. I'm not too worried about the party not coming together. I'm not worried about them not working together. I'm just worried about creating and maintaining a fun, believable storyline. But we'll just deal with that when we get there. So, see you next time. Bye.